Now, just one final word. There's a bit of a tension in all of this, in this understanding of U.S. policy and what the President said on Thursday. What the President tried to do on Thursday, I think, was to establish a general set of principles that would guide U.S. policy toward Arab movements for political change, even under conditions in which it was not convenient for the U.S. to support those movements. And to the extent that these metrics guide decision-making, it's going to be very hard to reconcile how this conditions-based approach to dealing with Syria fits with a policy and values-based framework for U.S. strategy toward the Arab Spring. And what that does, of course, is leave the President very exposed to the charge that the speech was, in fact, empty rhetoric, that U.S. policy does, in fact, contain some significant contradictions and can legitimately be described as hypocritical. But that's what happens, I think, when the President tries to give an overarching principled framework for U.S. policy in a context in which decisions are really being driven by conditions on the ground and a very pragmatic set of metrics rather than necessarily a value-based set of metrics. And so I will leave it at that.
Well, thank you very much. Steve and Helena and Ammar, a lot of amazing insights and into Syria and what happens next. We've had a range of views. Ammar saying Bashar is not salvageable. Helena calling for constructive engagement toward a transition. Steve inferring that perhaps the administration believes a U.S. break with Syria is inevitable. And there was talk about a negotiated exit strategy. Nobody wants to see chaos in Syria. Helena said it's almost too big to break. But I wonder if that's wishful thinking. Is an exit strategy possible? This is, of course, all in the realm of speculation, but let's speculate. If we're going to talk about exit strategies, who are we looking at who could help facilitate an exit strategy? Turkey, the Gulf, the military, the Alawite elite themselves? Perhaps each one of you can take on that question very briefly, beginning with Ammar.
I really believe that we are talking basically right now about exit strategies. I mean, this is the only way out of this quagmire. And an exit strategy in any kind of a dialogue or moderation or mediation process has really to involve two components in order for it to be acceptable to everyone. One is, except the Assads, one is that they ultimately need to go. I mean, anything that keeps them in power is not an exit strategy, is not a serious mediation, is not a change, is not reform, is nothing. I mean, they are the ones who this has become really about them. They've made it because of the family-based nature of the regime. They've made it always sort of like a referendum on them. And we don't want them. And I think if there are forces on the ground, specifically the Alawite community, religious minority communities, Ba'ath leadership, who also include a lot of Sunnis. We cannot just keep only speaking about their support basis only being sort of minoritarian. But these people have to find other spokesmen for themselves, because in reality, change will not be serious so long as the people who are responsible for the status quo and creating the status quo are there. So the mediation really has to involve and talk about an exit strategy for the Assad out of the country, not for the country simply out of the current crisis. So that's a situation that has to be. This is a sort of like a condition that people need to be aware of. Now, there are a lot of serious concerns, very legitimate, on part of the minority communities in Syria, whether they are Alawite or Christians or Druze or Ismailites or Kurds, if you want to also speak in terms of national identities. And these concerns are legitimate, and I think one slogan that in a sense, the people have raised in knowing what it really implies, when they say the people and the army are one, When the Syrians say it, it's different from when the Egyptians say it. When the Egyptians say the people and the army are one, they are not dealing with the same sectarian realities we deal with in Syria. In Syria, this was actually the guarantee that the Syrian people, the protesters, wanted to give to minority communities, especially the Alawite, because the leadership of the army are Alawites. And they're not challenging that. They're not challenging the structure of the army, the nature of the army, and the idea that they want to create a schism within the army between Sunnis and Alawites. This is not what we want, actually. The idea is that we want the army as it is right now, minus those who want to write themselves off the formula. But we want it as much as possible as it is to take part in the transitional process. As such, it will be the guarantor of minority rights. It will be the guarantor of the Alawite right. It will be the guarantor of stability. If only they can get there. And the only way to get them to begin calculating and to begin thinking along these terms is when they realize that there is a serious international decision against the Assad, that the Assad have been targeted, that these people, that's it, they're gone. When they see this happening and they don't keep hearing about the possibility of well, the Assads are still there, we don't want regime change like the Europeans said, or the Obama administration still lead the possibility of Assad leading transition or whatever. As long as this kind of line of thinking is there, I don't think any kind of schism within the army is going to happen. I don't think the upper echelon in the Ba'ath party is going to begin rethink its loyalties. So that's why we are sort of pushing on and on for a clearer statement by Obama, by European leaders against Bashar. Now we got the sanctions. We're hoping to push it to ICC. All of these issues, as Helena indicated, can still be renegotiated later on if the Assad wants out. Some of their assets could be unfrozen. ICC indictment could be shelved, whatever. But they need to get there. They need to understand this is serious in order for us to be able to get to that point. Now, who can be the interlocutors? I think Turkey, and Helen would probably confirm that. I think Turkey has an important role to play here. They've right now tried to sort of talk to the Assads, but they've tried to convince the Assad to sort of reform. They did not really try to lead a mediation process or a process to chart an exit strategy. I think if they can see that there is an international consensus on the need for Assads to leave, they probably have a lot of the army generals on speed dial because they've conducted joint exercises together. I think they know a lot of the Ba'ath leadership people. I think if by encouraging other governments like Qatar, perhaps even the Iraqis, they can probably get more and more insight on what people that they need to approach. I think Turkey really needs to be empowered one way or another to be the interlocutor in the situation. I think they want that role. I think they crave it to a great extent, simply because Syria is right there. It's not like Libya. They cannot sort of make a statement and try to later on sort of alter their position. Syria is there. Their failure in Syria is a failure for their neo-Ottoman ambitions. It's a major, huge blow to their design and their sense of identity that's emerging right now, not only as AKP-led Turkey, but as Turkey per se.